So there's a tense and escalating situation tonight on the fringes of Europe. American officials say the Russian military, and it appears to be true, is massing forces on the Ukrainian border. Now, in response to this, a group of 15 Republican congressmen has written a letter to Joe Biden. The letter demands the administration send troops to Ukraine. Congressman Mike Turner of Ohio is one of the signatories to that letter, and he joins us tonight. Congressman, thanks so much for coming on. So,
hey, Tucker, thank you so much for bringing attention to this issue. This is one that the mainstream media is not going to be reporting and is incredibly important for people to understand what Russia's doing and really the threat to the United States and the threat to the United States allies.
Well, that's kind of the force of my question. My first one. So, a lot of military families watch the show. You've called for sending American troops to Ukraine, to the region, as you put it. I wonder if you could explain to them why it is in America's interest that their kids risk their lives in Ukraine.
Yeah, well, there's a couple things, which I'm certain you're aware of, Tucker, that the United States signed with Russia and Ukraine a treaty in Budapest guaranteeing the territorial integrity of Ukraine in exchange for them during the dismantling of the Soviet Union of giving up nuclear weapons, of not being a nuclear weapon state. And in Bucharest, NATO summit, we also agreed with our NATO allies that Ukraine, which is an ally to NATO, would receive a pathway to NATO. Russia sees Ukraine as importantly strategic because it's also the pipelines to give gas to Europe that they're trying to bypass with respect to building Nord Stream 2. As you know, Russia's already invaded Ukraine once and taken Crimea, which they've militarized and are likely very advanced nuclear weapons there. We already have troops in Ukraine. The issue of our letter is to raise the importance so that people understand that we're about ready to see debacle number 2 of the Biden administration. You know, we all think of Afghanistan, and that's really coming out of this. China, Russia are going to be more adventuresome as a result of the failures of the administration. But when you think of Afghanistan, you think of those planes leaving and people running toward those planes, people falling to their death. And as you know, Tucker, if those planes were Russian, no one would be running toward them. This is the idea of America, of democracy, freedom.
But may I just ask really quick?
And it's certainly one that is an ally of ours.
So the lesson of 20 years in Afghanistan and the tragic and cowardly and counterproductive exit from Afghanistan is that we need more troops in Ukraine? I don't. So why should the average American care about the territorial integrity of Ukraine? Sincerely.
Okay. So Ukraine is a strategic import of the Black Sea. Most of the reports that you've been seeing of Russia being aggressive with our ships, aggressive with our planes, are in the area of the Black Sea, which is an important area for us and our NATO allies. 4 countries, Romania, Bulgaria, Greece, and Turkey, all border it, of which we have reciprocal defense agreements. Now, we've not asked anybody to go to war with Russia or to send troops to Russia for Ukraine for the purposes of going to war with Russia. But it is incredibly important that they be providing lethal weapons, that they be providing intelligence so that Ukraine has an ability to defend itself.
But why is it incredibly important to Americans? I mean, I know from a Ukrainian perspective it's incredibly important, but why is it important enough to risk American lives to preserve the territorial integrity of Ukraine when, by the way, our own territorial integrity has been flagrantly violated by 1 million foreign nationals coming in over the past 10 months? I wonder why the emphasis on Ukraine's borders and not ours.
Well, I think everyone has an emphasis on our borders, Tucker, but certainly I think you would
Have you called for American troops to our borders?
The importance, everyone has called for American troops that is on our side, Tucker, but I think what you're missing here is the fact that because the president has failed in Afghanistan, both Russia and China are looking at threatening their neighbors, including Taiwan, including Ukraine, countries that are important to both our allies and to the strategic importance of the areas in which they are. What we've asked for is don't be Obama. You have to recall, Tucker, that when Ukraine was invaded and Crimea fell, Obama sent blankets to President Poroshenko in Ukraine. He came to the House floor, joint session of Congress, and he begged for lethal weapons to be able to defend his own country against Russia. He said, I can't defend my country with blankets. That's what we've said is make certain that we give them what they need. Give them intelligence, give them lethal weapons, give them assistance.
But why would we take Ukraine? But hold on. Why would we take Ukraine's side and not Russia's side? It's a sincere question. If you're looking from the American perspective. No, but why? I mean, Who's got the energy reserves? Who's the major player in world affairs? Who's the potential counterbalance against China, which is the actual threat? Why would we take Ukraine's side? Why wouldn't we be on Russia's side? I'm totally confused.
Well, clearly, maybe if you get out a map and you look to see where the Black Sea is, and Bulgaria and Romania, where we have our missile defense system, Greece and Turkey, the entrance to the Black Sea. And then from there, you look at what the conflicts have already been and Russia's areas there. Ukraine is a democracy. Russia is an authoritarian regime that is seeking to impose its will upon a validly elected democracy in Ukraine. And we're on the side of democracy. That's why people were chasing those planes in Afghanistan and wouldn't be chasing Russian ones. We're for democracy. We're for liberty. We're not for authoritarian regimes coming in and changing borders by tanks. Russia isn't showing up on the border with ballot boxes. They're showing up on the border with tanks. And that's why we need to make certain we're on the side of democracy and give the aid that's necessary so we don't have another Obama sending blankets to a country that's being invaded.
Yeah, I guess I'm for democracy in other countries, I guess, but I'm really for America, and I just think that our interest is in counterbalancing the actual threat, which is China, and the only other country with any throw weight that might help us do that is Russia, and our continuation of the Cold War has pushed Russia toward China, and that does not serve our interest in any way, does it? Or maybe it does.
Okay, so you have to understand, this is not a Cold War. This is a hot war. Russia has already invaded Ukraine and has taken Crimea and annexed it and militarized it. It's not like.
But how did that affect? Wait, hold on. So I'm glad you pointed that out. Like, so how did that hurt America exactly? So they came into Crimea. I guess I'm against that. But I didn't notice a detectable decline in American living standards.
Weaponry systems.
Okay, but why do I care again?
The issue, you care because what Russia is doing is they are rebuilding their area axis of denial with Kaliningrad, Crimea, and Syria to fortify what they had when they had the Warsaw Pact countries, which many of which now are in NATO and are headed toward NATO, so that we can make certain that liberty and democracy is strengthened. You should be against, and I'm sure you are, Tucker, any country using tanks to invade another and putting their will on that country and changing that country's borders.
Yeah, academically I am, but I mean, there are a lot of priorities on the map here. Last question. So you sent this letter to President Biden asking for the commitment of American troops to a foreign country.
We did not, and you've misread the letter because what it says is it actually tells specifically, we not say send troops into Ukraine. We said make certain that there's a military presence in the area so we can provide aid to Ukraine in two important areas. Intelligence. If we have troops in the area, we can watch. We know what happens. We know what Russia's doing. The second is lethal weapons so that Ukraine can defend itself.
I got it. Send lawyers, guns, and money. I totally got it.
None of the members of Congress suggest that anybody should go to war in Ukraine with Russia. No one. And the letter doesn't say that.
Well, I'll let our viewers can pull up the letter on the internet and reach their own conclusions. That's not the conclusion I reached.
They can go to my website. I'll put it up,
absolutely.
Tucker.
But final question. Our democracy is undermined when people come from other countries, and that devalues the vote of the people who already live here. So that's an attack on our democracy. A democracy has to have defendable borders. So where's the American military presence? Where are the Republicans demanding that we send the 101st or whatever it takes to close the border? I've never heard anybody say that. They're all whipped up about Crimea.
Hey, Tucker. Unlike your anti-Trump friend J.D. Vance, I supported Donald Trump in closing the border, including defending him in his impeachment trial, which you yourself reported. And that border was being closed under the policies that we had under Donald Trump, which I supported when I supported Donald Trump. So
actually, you wrote a letter to Trump. Whoa. So now that we're getting factual here, and I don't want to be mean, but you wrote a letter to Trump in which you said, yeah, protect the border, but make certain that we don't in any way take troops or materiel from our foreign commitments and bring them to the border. You said that in your letter. And so I just thought that's just a different perspective.
Donald Trump sent lethal weapons and intelligence training. I said, I'm a senior member of the Armed Services Committee and the Intelligence Committee. What I've asked for in that letter, Donald Trump did.
I'm aware. I thought it was stupid then. I think it's stupid now.